Awesome. Welcome everyone to Insurjo 2024. I think the chat is super excited. And I think this energy really brings us to a wonderful kickoff. So thank you so much everyone for joining in. I know everyone's as excited as us. I'd love to introduce my co-host for today, Aditya Mohanty. Adi, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic. This is my favorite time of the year when we get going and kick off a session as power packed as this one. So super excited to see everyone, and like you said, the chat is buzzing. So can't really wait to get started.
Absolutely. Folks, just as a quick agenda for all of y'all, while the other folks join in, please let us know on the chat section which is your dream company to work at, right? All of us are working hard towards upskilling ourselves over the next 4 weeks. Let's put a goal to it. I'm not saying we will hit it in a month, but if you were to put a goal in 2024, this is a company that I want to land a job at. Of course, when the market becomes better, we will help each other get there. But put it on the chat section. I can already see a ton of great companies being listed. Um, while those come in and while we wait for everyone else to come in, a quick agenda for today. We will start off with a little bit of introduction into what you can expect over the next 4 weeks. So we'll share a little bit about the product folks journey, tell you some tidbits about what you can expect in Insurjo 2024, how it is different from the crowded space of product management education in today's world, why we do it the way we do it, and lots more. So stay tuned. And of course, we will be joined by Ravi Mehta, who is the ex CPO of Tinder. I know all of us have probably used it, so I'm sure you'll have lots of questions. But even if you haven't, I think gaming startups and dating startups have tons to teach you about consumer product management. So keep those questions ready. Adi, I think lots of interesting answers coming in on the chat section, and a couple of very interesting
Absolutely.
companies that I am discovering as well. So pretty excited to see what's going next.
Absolutely. I think one thing that I can say about this cohort is they are pretty ambitious from the companies that we see here. And with a little hard work and the structured learning that we have come up with for Insurjo, a lot of workshops, a lot of hands-on experiences. I'm sure you'll get there, like Swa said, not in a month, not in a few weeks, but at least this is a great goal to have.
Absolutely. And I think the good part is the course itself has evolved over years. Like you can see on your screen today, I think it is a great mix of education, mentorship, and helping people land great opportunities by the community for the communities. That's exactly where we've been different. And we're not new. We've been around for a long while now. Started with offline events in Bangalore. In the pandemic, did a bunch of stuff. Landed at what we do today, where Insurjo is one of the many things that happen at TPF, right? So do explore the community. Uh, with that, I think Adi, also like fantastic growth over the last 4 years. How's your experience been? You joined way
Absolutely.
back in the day, right?
It has been a dream of a lifetime, as they usually say, right? So crazy journey. If someone would have told us 5 years back that these are the numbers we'll be at, I wouldn't have believed it for sure. but this only because of all the love that we continue getting even during the previous cohort that we did. It's probably one of the largest cohorts, live cohorts globally, that we run for product management, and the outpouring of love is immense every single time. So thanks again for all your love, all your support. You are here on a Saturday night over a long weekend, so that says a lot about you. That eagerness and willingness to learn and keep growing. So keep that up for sure, and we'll continue growing with you.
Absolutely. Saturday night for folks joining in from Asia, but I was just checking where people have joined in from, and it looks like a global cohort with global mentors. So everyone who's joining in from the West, good morning. For everyone joining in from the East, good evening. It's going to be a power pack to us, like Adi said. I think very interesting stuff that is lined up for you. So welcome to Insurjo 2024. Many of y'all might have received this in your inboxes. It might be in the updates folder or the promo folder. If you do find it there, move it to the primary section so that you don't miss any other updates from the product folks. Also, I think huge shout out to all our partners without which this wouldn't have been possible. Some of them have been around since we've started the product folks. So huge shout out to them. Adi, maybe if you want to share a quick intro into some of these and what they do so that our product community can learn more about them.
Absolutely. These are pretty renowned product companies globally when it comes to product management as a space, even marketing for that matter, right? So, all of you would have heard of WebEngage, Dscope, AirMeet, Stream, MoEngage. These have been our partners for very long, and we keep doing a bunch of interesting things with them, right? They are not just our partners, but they work with us together to create unique experiences, right? For example, we are doing an amazing product onboarding hackathon with Dscope within Insurjo. AirMeet, our platform of choice for this cohort. WebEngage has been a constant support, one of the best marketing automation tools out there. Stream, MoEngage, all of them have been strong supporters for the community. So huge shout out to each one of them for making this cohort as amazing as it is. Without their support, it definitely wouldn't have been this way. So yeah.
Yeah, and in case you'll come across any of members from their companies, or if some of y'all work from there, do give them a shout out because none of this would have been possible without them. Awesome. Another question that we get very often in today's scenario, I think Insurjo is very different from when we started in 2019, right? I think back then the product space was very nascent. I can name one or two only other cohorts that existed, but this has exploded over the last 5 years. Well, one question we get now is, okay, hey, what makes Insurjo different in 2024, right? And I know lots of y'all might have the same question, not just about Insurjo, but hey, how do I even select? Where do I go upskill myself as a product manager, or if you're looking to break in, or if you've already transitioned with the product folks over the last couple of years and you still want to continue learning from amazing folks, right? So there are three things. Adi, do you want to go for it?
Absolutely. So as you would still remember the sleepless nights we had during Insurgent 21, when we
Absolutely.
were formulating a cohort that would democratize product education, right? Because all the courses, like you said, there were very few courses back then. Even now, there are tons of courses, but most of them are inaccessible to many folks, right? Those cost more than $1,000 in many cases. So it gets accessing them is a huge difficulty, right? So with Insurjo, our goal always has been to provide a platform where anyone can come from anywhere and learn product management for completely free, right? And we have stuck to that goal, but we have some amazing new things lined up for you, right? We have a global panel of mentors here. You wouldn't have access to these kind of mentors anywhere across the globe, right? These are some of the most credential names in the industry, and we are fortunate enough to have them join us to teach this cohort, right? So huge thanks to all of them. I'm sure you'll be learning a huge deal of product management and a lot more when it comes to your career. So super excited for that. Another interesting thing that we are doing exclusively this time with Dscope is a product onboarding hackathon, right? So it's not just about learning with Insurjo, it's about applying those learnings and doing something hands-on so you get a hang of it, right? So we have come up with a product onboarding hackathon. You'll get more details about it throughout the cohort, but keep an eye out for this. Our week 4, which is the final week, is dedicated to this hackathon. There are lots of prizes to be won, but more importantly, you'll be able to apply your learnings and get better at it, right? And lastly, we keep hearing a lot about certification from our community. Everyone talks about it, everyone asks about it. So we thought we'll partner with the best out there, right? We'll partner with the top B school in the country to give you access to one of the best courses out there, right? So with Insurjo, you'll get certified by TPF, but if you want to get certified from B School, we have some exclusive access codes for all of you, which we'll give out at the end of every session. So stay tuned for that. We'll be sharing more about this right after the session once we get done with it. But this is something uniquely crafted just for TPF members. We are doing several master classes from companies like Paytm, Swiggy, Flipkart, etc. For the product management certification course here. But you'll get to know more about it right after this session. But before that, Suhas, we've spoken a lot about how we have made a better learning experience. Do you want to talk a bit about how we have made it a fun experience this time too?
Yeah, absolutely. I think super excited the way it's evolved and how we've been able to differentiate. I know we wanted to do hands-on. We brought that in with the product hackathon. I think no one else was touching global mentors, so I think very excited to host some very senior product leaders from outside. That said, I think the fun element of TPF in Sergio doesn't change. For everyone here, I think this part is super important. So listen through. Some of y'all on WhatsApp were asking me, okay, hey, we wanted access to um, there is a product management fundamentals, which is essentially the Insurjo that we did last year. This one is product management advanced. So at that point, I think there are a certain set of tasks. I think all of y'all are joining in live, and yes, someone was asking on the chat section, hey, will this be recorded? No, this is a live cohort, so no recordings. But some of y'all as part of this cohort will be taking down your learnings and sharing them online. So for folks who are doing that, please do tag the product folks and the hashtag Insurjo with TPF. You have lots of goodies to win, right? So I think we have an exclusive swag box which we get messages every single day asking us, okay, hey, how do I get my hands on some of these? So that's up for grabs. You have the Insurjo fundamentals access. So in case your notes are some of the best, we will reward you with some access. In in India, I think it's pretty late in the night and it's dinner time. So for some of y'all, I think Swiggy treats are on the product folks. Like Adi shared, I think one of the feedback from last year was, hey, if we could get a certification from a B school, because while some say that, okay, hey, certifications aren't as useful, I completely agree. Like, you can transition to product without certification. But for some of y'all, you did mention that, okay, hey, a branded or reputed college would be great for you, and we got you the best. So, stay along till the end for some exclusive access there. And last but not the least, I think we have more than $5,000 worth of prizes on the product hackathon. So yeah, it is time to start thinking. We will be sharing more details about the hackathon. For the first few prizes, you might ask, okay, hey, what all do I need to do? And you might ask us, okay, hey, what are some milestones that we need to cover to graduate and get the TPF certification? Firstly, yeah, it is a live cohort, so try attending as many, if not all. Share your learnings with the rest. I think you will have to attach these links at the end of this session, at the end of the cohort, so that we can provide you with the certificates. Participate in all weekly assignments, without which I think that is where the real learning lies. Apply whatever you learn while you go through this. And of course, I think at the end of it, we have a hands-on hackathon. All these four put together will make you eligible for the certificate, right? If you have any doubts on this, we will be having a small office hours with the Insurjo team post Ravi's session, right? So let us know if you have any questions on this. But without further ado, would love to invite Ravi on stage. Ravi has worked across multiple very high growth startups. His previous stint was with Tinder. So if you all have any questions around that, on the product side only, please do put it on the Q&A section. We have another Q&A tab here. Of course, we will not be able to take all the questions, but if there are more people upvoting your question, we will definitely take it up. Adi and me will stick around, and we'll curate some of these questions. So over the next hour, I think Ravi will be sharing his learnings, post which Adi and me will be back for a fireside chat with Ravi. We can now see him on screen. Welcoming him, Ravi. Hey, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm incredibly excited to be here.
Awesome. I should say welcome back to the product folks, because we've hosted Ravi once in the past as well. And this time, I think incredibly excited to have you during the kickoff. I think you might have noticed on the chat section, the energy is usually incredible during these kickoffs.
Amazing.
And I think it's early morning for you, so this is probably your alternative to coffee. The energy here, I'm sure, is going to keep you awake.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's early morning here. I know it's later in the evening for everyone. I'm incredibly honored to be kicking off with all of you. So I'm excited to dig into it.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Ravi, we definitely have a couple of questions for you, but what we thought is we'll give you the stage for the next 45 minutes to go through the slides, and then Adi and me will meanwhile curate some of the questions that come up and come back for a quick fireside with you.
Perfect. That sounds good. Let me get the slides on the screen. Let's see. All right, perfect. So welcome, everyone. I am incredibly excited to be here. We're going to talk about a topic today that I find incredibly interesting and something that is a challenge for product builders. As product builders, we want to create things that are significant and aspirational and solve important problems for our users, but we can't just go heads down and do that without understanding customers and without approaching things iteratively. And so the topic I want to talk about today is how do you make really big bets on the future that you can be proud of, that solve important needs for customers, and then how do you do that one small step at a time so that you can iterate and you can work towards that long-term bet, but do it in increments that are fast, informative, and ultimately really effective. And so to introduce myself, I'm Ravi Mehta. I have been a product leader throughout my entire career. I started product as my first job out of school. So I went to school for computer engineering. I actually started a game company when I was in college. I dropped out for a little bit and went back and finished up my degree. And right after school, I joined Microsoft as a program manager, which is essentially equivalent to what a product manager is today. I joined in the game group. So I spent about 6 years focused on various aspects of gaming. I was very fortunate to join Microsoft at a really interesting time in gaming where the company was just kicking off the Xbox. So I joined as one of the first 20 or so members of the Xbox team. I spent a lot of time thinking about Xbox Live and multiplayer gaming and how to create entertainment experiences that would really take advantage of internet functionality that was proliferating throughout the world. And that had kicked off a thread that has stayed with me my entire career. I have always focused on consumer products, so I'm incredibly passionate about the role that products can play in everyday people's lives. And almost everything that I've worked on has had some social element where it's got some element of connecting people together. And that's extended to social networking. I spent some time at Facebook, travel. I'm going to talk about Tripadvisor today, dating, gaming, and many other areas. Today, I'm a full-time product advisor and product coach. And my last few product leadership roles were I was head of consumer product at Tripadvisor, which we're going to go into a lot today. I led a team at Facebook focused on Gen Z. And then I was the chief product officer at Tinder. And during the Q&A, we'll have an opportunity to talk about lots of those different experiences. I've also, for the last few years, really wanted to support the product community here in the US and internationally. And so I've done some writing and some teaching and some advising and coaching to help people get their first product role and help people who are in product roles really excel. So I'm incredibly excited to be with you tonight and to answer Q&A. Give me 1 second. I'm just going to check the chat. All right, great. Perfect. So I wanted to kind of start out with some grounding in terms of how can you approach building products. There's a few different ways. One of the things that I think was very common, still common today, but very common years ago in sort of the early phase of product is a big bang launch where you say, okay, here's everything that we want to build for the customer. We go down, heads down for 3 months, 6 months, 9 months, and come out of that and ship a product to the customer. The problem with that approach is you're not learning along the way. You're spending a lot of time building. And most often what would happen is people would take a big swing and they'd have a big miss because the product that you release is not actually informed by what users want. And so there's been this push towards the lean startup methodology, agile methodologies that are much more iterative. And when people implement iterative product development, one of the tendencies is actually to break the product down into pieces that actually don't fit that well together, and where each step of the way is not operable for the customer. And so if you pull too much out of the product, you could end up with something where you want to deliver a car to the customer and your first iteration is one wheel, which is just not that useful. And so really the right way to build iteratively is to focus on user-centric iterations. And I should credit Spotify. These graphics are from Spotify. They have some great pieces on how to scale agile product development and product management. And the fundamental idea is that the right way to build towards a long-term vision is to have user-centric iterations where you deliver a small vertical slice of value to the customer at each step of the way. So as you build towards that ultimate car that you want to deliver to the customer, the first step might be a skateboard. The next step might be a scooter that gives a person a little bit more control, and then maybe a bicycle, and then maybe a motorcycle, and then maybe a car. So each step of the way, you're getting towards the promise of delivering the ultimate product to the customer, but each of those iterations is actually useful and valuable in its own right. And the thing that I wanted to talk about today that I don't think gets talked about enough is that actually this process of user-centric iterations is 2 different steps. The first step, which is very critical, is to define the long-term vision. What do we actually want to build? What is the blueprint for that car that we'll deliver to customers? And then once we have that long-term vision, we can actually think about what is the iterative path that we use to get there. And if you don't do things in this order and just start iteratively, one of the challenges is that you can end up with kind of a Frankenstein product where, each iteration kind of gets a little bit better, but not in a way that is iterating towards a coherent long-term vision. And so today I want to talk about this process of establishing a long-term vision and determining the iterative path. I have some questions for you along the way, so we'll go through this case together. And this case is about Tripadvisor. So Tripadvisor is one of the largest travel products in the world. Hundreds of millions of people visit Tripadvisor every month to get information about where they should go, which hotels they should stay at, which restaurants they should eat at, and what they should do when they're in destination. Tripadvisor is one of the only platforms where people can get really deep, authentic information from fellow travelers so that they can make decisions not based on the shiny brochures that hotel owners and restaurant owners want to share, but really based on the ground truth experiences of travelers in the market. Tripadvisor is actually a Web 1.0 company. It was started in 2000, so more than 20 years ago. And the initial insight that Steve Kaufer, the CEO of Tripadvisor, had was that the internet allowed you to enable everyone around the world to share their reviews and opinions. And if you enable that, you could deliver a really different type of travel experience to customers. And one of the other interesting things is that user-generated content approach also happened to work well with one of the most disruptive innovations around distribution of the internet, which was search engine optimization. And so that combination of just working really well with what Google was built for, plus tapping into the reviews and opinions of customers, led to Tripadvisor's significant growth. And like any company that has succeeded for a long period of time, Tripadvisor went through multiple phases. And in the early years, it was really about user-generated travel reviews being the core value proposition. So people would come to the site, they would read about hotels, they would go and book with Booking.com or Expedia or other booking sites. As things transitioned to mobile in around the 2008 timeframe, companies were trying to think about, well, what do we do on mobile? And I think, unfortunately, what a lot of companies did was they said, let's take our desktop experience and let's shrink it down to work on a mobile device. But really thoughtfully, what Tripadvisor did was say, actually, mobile is a different device that's used at different times, and we can create unique value here. And so Tripadvisor really leaned into being an in-destination mobile companion. And for that reason, was able to build a very strong mobile presence and continue to grow during the shift to mobile. And then around the time that I joined Tripadvisor in 2012, the company had been rolled out from Expedia. So as a newly independent public company, could start to do things strategically that didn't make sense when Tripadvisor was part of Expedia. And that led the company to grow from being a very user-generated travel review-oriented site, something that was really built on media, to much more of a transactional marketplace where you could not only come to the site to read reviews, but you could also book restaurants and attractions and hotels directly on the site. And in 2015, we were thinking about what is the next chapter of growth for Tripadvisor. So I want to just kind of go through some of the elements of what that time period was like at Tripadvisor so that we can talk about the different options that Tripadvisor was facing and what you would do if you were in the position of figuring out the strategy for the company. So at the time, in 2015, there were over 300 million travelers per month. Tripadvisor was the #1 travel product in the world. The bet on mobile had really worked. Mobile was now more than half the traffic. Simultaneously to mobile, Tripadvisor also made a really big bet on international. And so international traffic was growing quickly and nearly half the traffic. But there were also some challenges. So Tripadvisor's major growth channel, search engine optimization, was contracting. And that content loop where you're constantly getting new user reviews was starting to hit diminishing returns. And one of the reasons for that was Google was actually putting less emphasis on their organic SEO links and more emphasis on their paid search links. And so that was changing the way in which Tripadvisor got traffic and the way in which travel companies in general got traffic. The next thing was, because of that shift from organic links to paid search on Google, paid search costs were increasing. And they were increasing due to competition from Booking, Expedia, Trivago, other travel companies. The other thing that was happening at this time is major hotel chains were consolidating. They saw that there's these big players in the travel market. There's Google, there's Booking, there's Expedia, there's Make My Trip. And what they said was, we need to consolidate so that we can have a strong position in the market. And one of the biggest consolidations was, the Starwood and the Westin hotels. Sorry, the Starwood and the Marriott hotels coming together. And so at this time, Tripadvisor's hotel segment of its business was 85% of revenue. It was a healthy business, over probably about $1 billion a year in revenue at that time, but it was facing some really critical headwinds, and we had to think about what's next for Tripadvisor. And so if we zoomed out and thought about the strategy, there were really two distinct paths that the company could go down. The first one was a path where TripAdvisor was really doubling down on being the best accommodations marketplace, the best place to book hotels and vacation rentals. The other side was TripAdvisor could say, we don't want to just focus on hotels. We want to become a one-stop shop for travel products that enables people to book things other than hotels. They can book restaurants and attractions. I'll go through this in a little bit more detail. So this first option around the accommodations marketplace strategy, there were a couple of pros to it. One, hotels already accounted for about 85% of revenue in 2015. There were boutique hotels as well as small hotel chains that got the majority of their demand from TripAdvisor. And TripAdvisor had by far the best review coverage of any travel site in terms of hotels. So there was a lot of assets kind of in this direction, accentuating how valuable this strategy could be. But there were a couple of challenges. Hotel booking is highly competitive. It's highly lucrative. Booking, Expedia, Marriott were all competing intensely for that traffic, and there was consolidation in the market. And then Google was moving increasingly into hotel search, so that when you search for something on Google, rather than coming to TripAdvisor, you would get a list of hotels directly on Google. The other option was to say, let's become this one-stop shop for travel products, a travel hub that's kind of like the Amazon for travel. The benefit of this is TripAdvisor is really the only travel product with significant restaurants and experiences traffic. So TripAdvisor was in a unique place to make this work. It was also the only travel product that had really strong in-destination mobile usage, and a lot of travel purchases happen when travelers are in destination. But there are a couple of drawbacks to this approach. Little history of monetizing non-hotel traffic, and even if TripAdvisor could better monetize attractions and restaurants, the unit economics just wouldn't be as good as hotels because people spend so much on hotels and because that industry was so well established. In addition, the marketplace was really fragmented. So there were lots of different restaurant chains, lots of different individual restaurants, lots of different experiences, literally hundreds of thousands of different small business owners that TripAdvisor would have to create value for and partner with. And then lastly, this SEO channel that TripAdvisor had built was not great for driving long-term engagement with TripAdvisor, the sort of engagement TripAdvisor would need to become this one-stop shop. And so there was a disconnect between the way that travel worked, or the way that distribution worked, the way that SEO worked, and what we needed to achieve in order to make this strategy work. So I want to ask all of you, what would you do in this situation? Which is a better strategy for TripAdvisor and why? We're going to launch a poll so that you can vote on the poll. We'll be able to see the results in real time, which will be really exciting. And then put in the chat why you picked what you picked. Why do you think one strategy would be better than the other strategy? So let's launch the poll and get started.
Folks, go to the poll tab on your AdMeet. You'll see it on the right side, and you can vote there.
Oh, I think that is this the right poll? There we go. All right, hopefully everyone can see the poll. I just voted. So which is a better strategy for TripAdvisor, the travel hub strategy or the accommodation marketplace strategy? And then once you voted, please share in the chat. Why do you think that's the right strategy? What are the different trade-offs that TripAdvisor can and should be making here?
Yeah, I think we have over 1,000 votes in like a couple of seconds already. So I'm guessing, and we're pretty tight. Like I think it's a 60-40. I think like Ravi said, please do share your reasoning in the chat section. It would be pretty interesting to know why we're so closely tied up. I'll
Lots of great answers
hyper-prioritize.
coming in the chat. Someone highlighted, what's a red ocean versus blue ocean?
Yeah.
So the blue ocean strategy is one where you don't have a lot of competitors. That's probably the travel hub approach. The red ocean is more of the hotels where there's already a lot of established competitors. Let's see. Oh, the answers are coming in so fast. I can't read them.
Yeah, it becomes a little hard. I think we'll
Nice.
probably
This
compare
is
some of
great.
these and share with you. Yeah, it's going
Awesome.
crazy right now.
A lot of people saying travel hub because you can maintain a strong relationship. Some people saying accommodations because it's a very clear revenue driver. So lots of really good thinking. And so this is an example of a really critical decision that companies need to make, that product managers and product teams need to make. And this is exactly the type of thinking that can help you make the right decisions when you're in that moment. So I want to share what Tripadvisor decided to do. And so Tripadvisor looked at the opportunities and said, the really big opportunity for Tripadvisor, the thing that Tripadvisor is uniquely equipped to do, is to be that one-stop shop. And in order to do that, the thing that Tripadvisor needed to do was create a much more engaged relationship with the traveler. And it was really important that trip planning happen on Tripadvisor, that Tripadvisor enabled this idea of people-powered trip planning so that instead of going to Google every time and starting your search there, people would come to Tripadvisor and continue their search on Tripadvisor. So in this particular case, we're going to talk about the travel hub strategy. What's really important is that it wasn't entirely an either or type of decision, as some people have highlighted in the chat. Ultimately, any large company can do multiple things. So we were continuing to invest in the accommodations marketplace, but said, look, if we map things out over the next 5 to 10 years, attractions and restaurants and travel planning, this kind of idea of the one-stop shop was going to play an increasingly critical role for Tripadvisor. And why was this case? Why was this so important? The reason was that we had done a lot of foundational research about how people plan their trip. And what we found is that on average, people visit 25 different sites during a typical travel planning session for a vacation. And they go to different sites to collect information, to shop for prices. But one of the things that was true, that in many cases, people were ending up back at Tripadvisor. So something like 70% of all trips were informed by Tripadvisor content at some point. And so we had this really interesting contrast between the diversity of different sites that people would go to, combined with the fact that people kept ending up at Tripadvisor. And so our insight was that people follow many different paths to plan their trip. It's actually surprising how diverse this is. Sometimes a person might find a really good fare on a flight and book the flight and not even have anything else planned. From there, they figure out what they want to do and they book hotels. Other times people might have a destination in mind, and so they know that they've always wanted to go to Paris, and so they build the trip around that. Sometimes people might have a tentpole activity in mind. There might be a concert or something like that they want to build their trip around. And so people plan trips in very different ways. And actually the same people plan their trips in different ways depending on what the occasion is and who they're traveling with. But the thing that we knew that, in this universe of all of this travel planning diversity, the commonality was that Tripadvisor had the information to power each step along the way. And this is something that was unique to Tripadvisor relative to some of the other players within the space. And so we leaned into this idea of we need to build a strategy around people-powered trip planning. But the problem was that at the time, there had been lots of attempts to build trip planning products, and many of them had failed. Lots of startups had tried to do this and didn't work. And at the time, Google actually had a trip planning product in the market that wasn't doing well. And so we knew that in order to make this big bet, we had to be very clear about what we were trying to accomplish and how we were going to build it. And so the first step was to be very clear about the strategy. What are we trying to accomplish? And this is language taken directly from the strategy document that we put together. And we said, we will create continuous user engagement by becoming the hub of a user's travel planning and in-destination activity. This will be done by allowing travelers to effortlessly resume and complete their trip planning on Tripadvisor by enabling them to organize, share, and access all their trip content, no matter what device they are on and where they are in their planning journey. Our success will be measured by increased re-engagement with Tripadvisor throughout all stages of trip planning and ultimately an increase in revenue. So there are some really important parts of defining this strategy. The first one being it's about creating that continuous user engagement. The one advantage that Tripadvisor had versus Google was that every time you go to search for something on Google, whether it's Paris hotels or things to do in Paris, you're starting from scratch. Google has no understanding of where you are in your trip planning journey, what hotel you booked, what neighborhoods you're going to be in, what things are on your wish list. And that's something that we could change. And that if we do that, we're enabling travelers to resume and complete their trip planning. And ultimately, what we'll see is we'll absolutely see an increase in revenue, but the most immediate impact will be increased re-engagement, increased retention that we'll see through travel planning. And so this was a big, ambitious vision, and we needed to understand how do we build this out, and how do we start to, or how do we define the vision, and then how do we start to build this out in a very iterative way. And so the first thing that we did was we actually went through and we said, let's do a fresh North Star design of what the Tripadvisor product would look like if we really deliver on our desire to have the best possible travel planning experience for folks. And we actually shared in the pre-reads that document, that vision document that defined those steps. And so as we built out that vision, we actually identified that there were 8 different distinct features that would play a really important part of this trip planning functionality. And I'll go through each of these features. So the first one was collaborative planning. So enabling a traveler to invite collaborators to help and plan and edit their trip. This was really surprising to us that this was a critical feature, because Tripadvisor, and I think a lot of companies just approach a lot of things with, we're going to create an MVP. Our trip planning MVP will be a single player experience. Someone will be able to create a trip. They won't necessarily be able to invite fellow travelers. That's okay. That's a value add. We'll build that later. And so we'll start with a single player product, and then we'll build kind of a multiplayer or social product down the road. But what we found that was really interesting is that travel planning is an inherently social activity. And if you have a trip planning solution that actually prevents a person from collaborating with the other people that they're traveling with, helping get their opinions and show them what they're booking, then that actually is something that instantly doesn't have product market fit in many cases. So collaborative planning was the first feature. The second feature, which makes a lot of sense, which we knew ahead of time, was personalized recommendations. We know a lot about the traveler. As they save more to their trip, we're going to be able to really personalize the recommendations based on the things that they've said that they want to do. A third interesting feature was email integration. So at the time that we were building this, Google had released a trip planning app, and one of their kind of pillar features was that it would connect to your Gmail account. And as soon as you got itineraries, when you booked hotels or restaurants or any other things, it would automatically add those things to your trip plan. Really cool, kind of magical feature that would make trip planning easier. Next one was, we knew we needed to enhance the save to trip feature on Tripadvisor. So we had the ability, when you're looking at a place, to save that and bookmark it for later, but we just weren't getting a lot of people using that. And that feature could be a lot better. So we knew we needed to improve that. Another feature that we could work on is offline access. And so that feature was about enabling a person to have a really good experience in destination when they don't have an internet connection. This idea of offline access had been critical to Tripadvisor in the early years of mobile, and enabled Tripadvisor to create a great mobile experience as people were using their phones in other countries where they may or may not have access, and they may or may not want to pay roaming charges. And so we thought, okay, the trip plan might be something that people need offline access to. Related to this was building out a really good in-destination experience, so features to help travelers make decisions during their journey. And then the final two features, one was enabling us to kind of move from the trip planning experience into the post-trip experience. So features to help travelers write reviews based on the places that they visited, record their memories, and share their recommendations with friends. And then lastly, and this was something we knew kind of going in, was itinerary creation, the ability to create a full itinerary with dates and times for all of the things that you've booked for your trip. So we know that we have this really big long-term vision of we want to create a trip planning experience that is engaging and retentive for users. We want to drive user repeat usage. And so we have this very clear strategy that we want to deliver on. We've mapped out the long-term vision, the North Star of what that experience could look like. We've identified 8 core features of that long-term vision. And now imagine you're in the shoes of the product manager for that team, and you need to answer, we have this big vision. We want to build towards it iteratively. What is the next step that we should take? What trip planning feature should the team work on first, and why? And so we're going to launch that as a poll. I'm curious as to everyone's opinion about what feature they would build and why. So let's launch the poll. And then once you vote in the poll, share which feature you would build first and why that would be the first feature. I also realized we didn't share the results from the first poll. Do we have those results?
Yes, we do. Just a second. Do you want me to show that? I'll quickly show that before we come to this.
Yeah, let's quickly show that. That would be great.
Yeah. So this is the one. I think we closed it right after, but over 1,300 votes. I think some of them are still flowing through. Yeah, okay. It's a 60-40 split on this one.
And then 60 to the accommodations marketplace or the travel hub?
60 is to the travel hub.
Okay, great, nice. So we're largely all thinking in a similar way. Awesome. So thank you to everyone for voting. 1,300 people. That's incredible. So let's go on to the next poll. What trip planning feature should the team work on first, and why? We have these 8 different features: collaborative planning, offline access, personalized recommendations, in-destination experience, email integration, and post-trip experience. I think there's a couple of others as well that might not have made it into the poll. Is there enhanced save to trip?
Yeah, I think we had a maximum of 6 on a poll option.
Oh,
here.
no. Okay.
Separate one. Yeah. Save to trip and itinerary creation, I guess. These are the other 2 options that we had. But I think with over 1,000 votes now on this, and I'm guessing personalized recommendations and collaborative planning have taken the lead, each with about 33%. And yeah, single digit for the rest of them. So I think the top 2 with overall have over 1,000 votes, but collaborative planning and personalized recommendations take lead.
Amazing. Okay, great. And I will share in a minute how we thought about this. I'm curious, for folks that would pick enhanced save to trip or itinerary creation, put in the chat, why would you pick that? I know those weren't on the poll, but if that's the option you really feel like is the best option, share why that is. And we've got great ideas coming in. Itinerary creation feels like a must-have, clearest view of the whole trip, collaborative planning and itinerary creation, increase re-engagement through enhanced save to trip. Awesome. Really good ideas. Very thoughtful. Cool. Let me go on and just talk about how we saw these features. What was really interesting was, if you had asked us before we did this big kind of design exercise what we thought the most important features would be, we would have had a completely different answer than what we ultimately ended up on. And there were two things that helped us get to more of a ground truth in terms of what users wanted. One was doing these designs and really thinking about the different trade-offs of what this could look like. One of the things that underlined this idea of mapping out the vision, not just in words, but also in wireframes, is I think really good vision should be visual. Ultimately, as product managers, what we're often building is an end product for a user, and the way that that product is surfaced is through the pixels on the screen. And so just like you would never go to an architect and ask them to build you a house and expect them to deliver to you a spec, so just words of what that house is, you want a blueprint. You should want, when you're building a product, a blueprint as well. It's not enough just to describe in words what you want. It's really important to wireframe it out. And then the second thing that helped us get to the ground truth is having conversations with end users. And so based on those conversations, it highlighted a few different things. And so in terms of sequencing, we can broadly think about how you sequence features in terms of two different axes. The first one is impact. And this is obvious, right? We want to do the most impactful features first, and we want to do the less impactful features later or not at all. The other factor is urgency. How important is this particular feature now versus in the future? So for example, I'm working with a company right now, and we're building out a ton of different things, but the SEO team said, we want to get some SEO work done, because the sooner we actually get this SEO work done, the sooner we get pages out there, the sooner Google indexes them, and the sooner we start to see compounding results. So that particular feature has an element of urgency. And if we look at kind of the matrix of urgency and impact, we get a 2x2 matrix with 4 different quadrants. If something is low impact and low urgency, it's non-essential. We could do it, we could not do it. If something is low urgency but high impact, it's important work, but it's flexible. The timeline is flexible. It's not so critical in terms of the sequencing. If something is urgent, but the impact is low, then it's supporting work. It's something that we need to do. We likely need to do it soon, but it's not mission critical. And the really critical, the cornerstone work, are features that are both high urgency, we need to get them done soon, and high impact. And when we looked at it through this lens, the feature that really sort of stood out for us was enhanced saved to trip. So if we could change one behavior at Tripadvisor, just getting people to save to trip was really critical, because that would then allow us to start to build personalized recommendations, have a reason for users to come back, have something that could drive the itinerary, have something that in collaborative planning people could talk about. And so improving the save to trip feature, building the awareness and usefulness of that feature really rose to the top. And that was not something that we were expecting. And then the other two pieces of cornerstone work, which you guys absolutely nailed in the poll, is collaborative planning and personalized recommendations. Those 3 features knit together to form a really powerful trip planning experience where you can save things, you can talk about things, and then we can recommend other things that you would like based on those saves. Important supporting work, but not as impactful as we thought, is itinerary creation. And so we actually went into this thinking itinerary creation is the most important feature. We want to be able to have a calendar. We want people to be able to put things on that calendar. When are they booking into their hotel? When do they book this particular experience? But what we found is that a lot of people don't actually commit to specific dates and times for things when they travel. And so a lot of people want to create a kind of list of items that they would like to see and then experience things serendipitously. And this kind of came as a shock to us, in part because all of us working on this were product managers. And it turns out that product managers typically plan their trips differently than normal people. They like to have spreadsheets. They like to have everything mapped out. They like to have clear dates and times and know what they're doing each day of the week. But it turns out most people don't do that. And so for a small set of things that a person might book, there were dates and times and important things to highlight on the calendar. But even more important than that was just having a list of saves that were there for people and fellow travelers to talk about. And then, less urgent work was the in-destination and the post-trip experience. Both of these were important, but for the in-destination experience, we couldn't make it great until we did the cornerstone work. And for the post-trip experience, we already had really good review collection, a really good post-trip experience. And so it was important for us, but not something that needed to be done urgently. And then surprisingly for us, two features we thought would be important actually ended up in the non-essential bucket. We decided that email integration was less important. We looked at what the likely conversion rates are on people actually giving us access to Gmail, and how often people would actually have a booking that came in that we would add to their trip automatically relative to the cost from an implementation standpoint and a privacy standpoint, and just decided it was not essential. And then offline access, which had actually been a cornerstone of Tripadvisor's mobile strategy to enable people to access the app in destination, became lower on the priority list because we were at a point in 2015 where more and more folks had international roaming, and that was only going to increase over time. And so that feature was something that would become less and less impactful every single year. And so we decided to deprioritize it. So looking at things through that lens, we were able to create that iterative roadmap to our long-term vision. So I just want to go back to one of the earlier slides. And so we had this slide. We know that we need to build iteratively. We know that we need to define a long-term vision. And so we started by defining that long-term vision with the artifact doc that we shared. And then now we have a very clear iterative path. And so our iterative path starts with enhanced save to trip. That's really just a linchpin feature that everything drives from there. On top of enhanced save to trip, we could build out the itinerary, build out the collaborative planning, add personalized recommendations, ultimately add the in-destination experience and the post-trip experience, and know that with each one of those features that we incrementally add into trip planning, we're getting closer and closer to that North Star vision. And so this highlights a really important part of building great products. And that's a tension, but an important relationship between the product vision, which is an ambitious outcome, which could take many months or even years, and our quarterly or monthly goals, which are our tactical short-term targets. And so once you've mapped out your North Star vision, once you've sequenced out your features into a clear roadmap, then you need to determine what are the goals. And there's multiple ways to define goals. Here, I'm using OKRs. OKRs, objectives and key results, are one of the most popular way to define goals. And essentially the objective and the key results serve two different but important purposes. Objectives are defining, what is the achievable aspiration for the team, and key results are defining what are the quantifiable metrics that indicate that we've actually made progress towards that aspiration. And so the next step in the process for us was to say, we now know we need to build out the enhanced save to trip feature, and we need to define our OKR for the next quarter. So the team went through this process of North Star vision, prioritize roadmap, and now needs to define what are the OKRs for Tripadvisor's first quarter of building out this trip planning functionality. And that first quarter is going to focus on saves. And so we knew we need to increase awareness and usage of saves, increase users' investment into Tripadvisor, use saves in the app to drive push notifications and to drive repeat engagement, and to understand the causal relationship between saving and retention. And so an exercise for you is to answer, how would you define the OKRs for the Save to Trip feature? Think about that, write out the OKRs, and post it on your socials. Anything to add on that, Tanmay, in terms of how to post that to socials?
Yeah, Ravi, we'll share that with folks right after this. Yeah, we'll walk them through the process.
Perfect. That sounds good. So, I want to go through what we determined as our OKR for that first quarter. So our OKR was build a retentive engagement loop centered around travel planning by increasing awareness and usage of saves and trip creation. And we'll have 3 key results: increase the number of unique savers by the end of the quarter, increase saves per saver by the end of the quarter, and increase 7-day repeat rate. So those key results are really triangulating. We want more people to save. We want those people to save more, and we want those people to come back. And so we started with this ambitious North Star of delivering people-powered trip planning. And then at the end of that process, we had a really clear OKR around there's one particular feature we want to work on. We want to drive awareness of it. We want to see that improving awareness of that feature drives the ultimate result, which is 7-day repeat rate. And this ultimately summarizes or encapsulates how you can take a really big bet and iterate towards it in one small, meaningful step at a time. And so if we look at what happened at Tripadvisor, that multi-year product vision is still unfolding for the company. In the 2019 annual report, and I picked this because it was pre-pandemic. The pandemic did have a pretty significant impact on travel, but I wanted to kind of highlight in 2019, so this was 3 years after we built out the trip planning vision, the language, the ideas that we were using were still really important to the company. So Steve said in that annual report, we really want the app to be that sort of in your pocket hub for all of your travel planning moments, but also your on destination companion where you can not only organize all the things that you've booked on Tripadvisor, but also discover great deals, last minute opportunities, or recommendations from travelers like you. So 3 years later, a lot of those ideas that we developed in the North Star still resonating within the company, still underpinning important elements of how the company was driving growth. And so in 2019, at the time of this annual report, the team had delivered that enhanced save to trip functionality. User engagement with saves and trips more than doubled. Traffic continued to increase, more than 400 million unique visitors in 2019. And experiences and restaurants revenue now today makes up about 30% of overall Tripadvisor revenue versus just 15% in 2015. So it's more than doubled. And it's expected to make up more than half of revenue in upcoming years. So this drove a really significant diversification in terms of the company's revenue. The number of restaurants that were available to book on the platform has increased. So nearly 90,000 restaurants in 22 countries, nearly 350,000 bookable experiences. And so overall, lots of benefit, lots of value driven by taking this more travel planning oriented view and thinking really deeply about what that means, how to create a clear long-term vision, and how to execute on that vision iteratively. As I mentioned, it hasn't all been easy. Tripadvisor has been competing in a very competitive travel market, and COVID has had a pretty significant impact. It looks like that's turning around now, thankfully, for everyone in the travel industry. And something I'm really proud of is if you look at the product today, the elements of trip planning are really infused throughout the product. One of the key debates that we had was, should accessing your trip plan be on the bottom nav of mobile? Was there room for it? And at the time, that bottom navigation had things like hotels and restaurants. And there was a debate of, are people going to use trip planning enough that we actually want to bump one of those things off the bottom nav? And today, it is a clear part of the nav. Discovering things for your trip plan, saving things for your trip plan is a key part of how the mobile application experience works. You can find guidance for millions of travelers. You can set up trip plans. You can invite people to organize your trip with you. There's great mapping features. So a lot of what we ideated at the time has made it into the product in a really rich and full-featured way. And so, that is the conclusion. I'm excited to take a Q&A now. We can talk about Tripadvisor. We can talk about other things that are top of mind. But thank you for walking through the case with me. Thank you for all of the really sharp thinking on how to approach this strategically and how to think more iteratively about how you implement that long-term strategy.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Ravi. I think participants were really enjoyed this. I think folks do share your feedback on the chat section. We will take some of the questions you all have added as well. Unfortunately, we won't be able to take all of them. So maybe tip for next time is add your questions a little early. And in case you do add them, ask your friends to upvote it so that we can take the most upvoted ones. But Ravi, I think just Adi and my experience from having done this, this is the fourth year in coming. I think one thing I personally felt was both the polls that you put up, the responses were pretty fantastic. I think for folks to come up with, and I was on the chat, so I think while you were presenting, I was also going through some of the other responses, although they were coming in faster than I could keep up as well. I think that is one thing I really thought as that has grown like leaps and bounds. So thanks so much for curating this case study and walking everyone through. I think that was really interesting. Folks, while we do kick off the fireside chat with Ravi, do check the Q&A tab and help us upvote some of the questions. Adi and me have already curated some of these questions. Adi, maybe I'll kick off with a couple and then maybe we can alternate between us as I go.
Sounds good. Let's go.
Yeah, we'll also give Ravi a slight breather. I know it's been 45 minutes.
All good.
So, awesome. Yeah, I think Ravi, maybe you could also scroll through the chat section. I think some great feedback coming in for your session. But Ravi, while there are direct questions for each of the companies you've worked at, some of the questions from the slides you shared in today's session, I see two broad topics. I was going through the Q&A, and I think given the times we live in, right? So I think maybe I'll start a little horizontal and then we'll go specific into specific questions. So two broad questions that I'd love to address upfront. One is AI and product management, right? So I'd love to get your views on how you think the coming decade looks like. And the second one is folks looking to transition, right? There are some of them who've been product managers for a couple of years. But given the times that we stay in, I think it's kind of flipped. So I think these are two topics that I'd love to start with. Adi, maybe then we could curate some more questions from the Q&A tab here and the ones that we have. Is that good?
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Let's go.
Awesome. So Ravi, I think kicking this off with AI and product management, you worked in traditional product management, I'd say, like what it was in the pre-generative AI space. There are two parts to this question. One is, how does it affect the life of a product manager, right? How should one start using some of these tools? How should one start thinking about AI in their roadmaps, etc.? And I'll come to the second bit, but yeah, first bit, I'd love to hear your opinion on how does a product manager upskill themselves in the age of generative AI.
Yeah, absolutely. So firstly, I would say I think it's really important. As an industry, we tend to hype things, and sometimes we overhype things. And in a way, I think AI has been overhyped with people talking about the end of humanity and whatnot. But so I don't think humanity is going to end anytime soon. But I do think that there are very few things that have fundamentally changed the tech industry over the last 30 years. And those things are smaller, cheaper microprocessors, cloud computing, mobile. That's really it. Like almost everything else, every innovation, you can tie back to one of those three things. And now I think we have a fourth thing, which is generative AI. And the way that I think about that is up until the last few years, and these always happen over time, they're not like black and white things. Up until the last few years, the way that information technology worked is you would write the rules for your product and then you would get the output of your product. And so in order to deliver anything to the customer, you had to know what are the rules that actually drive the outcome that we want. And with AI, it's actually flipped it on its head. We can take data, we can take output, and then AI can actually figure out the rules. So the classic example is, how do you tell the difference between a dog and a cat? You can't write rules for that. That's really, really hard. But given enough data, AI can figure out how to tell the difference. And so as product managers, we have a fundamental new toolkit in our arsenal, which is how do you take existing data and use that to create the product functionality versus having to define the product functionality up front? And so that way of thinking about AI, I think, is really different. And I think it's fundamental from a product standpoint. And so the first thing I would say for PMs that want to excel in this is to understand that there is this new way of thinking. And there's some natural areas where that is going to play, and has already played. Like people that do a lot of work around trust and safety and content moderation have been using AI for 5-7 years to do those things, to identify obscene content, to help identify things that have misinformation. And now the gamut of places where we can use that is much larger. So I think that kind of sets the overall stage. And importantly, as part of that, when I was at Tripadvisor, a lot of new PMs, we hired a lot of PMs into their first role, would ask me, should I learn to code? And my answer was like, you can if you want to, but that's not really the thing. Being able to write Hello World in Python is not going to help you work better with engineers. Just like, if you're an architect, being able to learn to use a saw or a hammer is not going to help you work better with builders and contractors. Instead, the important thing is to know how the internet works, know what a client is, know what a server is, know the role of HTML and CSS versus JavaScript, and know how the different pieces fit together. That same approach, I think, is really important for AI. And so it's important for product managers to get a block level understanding of how does AI work. What are vector embeddings? What are large language models? What is fine tuning? What is prompt engineering? Why is that important? And to understand how to treat AI not as a black box, but really as Lego blocks that you can snap together to solve different problems. So I think those are the two big things for PMs, is understand that you have this fundamental new capability, which is to turn data into functionality rather than having to pre-spec that functionality. And then, understand how all of those pieces fit together to enable you to take advantage of that.
Awesome. I think that's a great way to put it. Ravi, if I may just double down on that, while at your time while you were at Tinder, for example, I'm sure AI was implemented in recommendation systems, etc. Like lots of AI was already part of the products that you were building. What really shifted in this last year? I know there was a fundamental shift in terms of when ChatGPT launched. I think that's where a lot more people got introduced to this. But is there something that has drastically changed from a function point of view as a product manager? Do you think, like you mentioned, I think these are two main things to take care of. But in terms of, because you've seen the previous wave and, very, very high growth consumer startup already implement AI in their team, what really changes in such companies?
Yeah, I think the thing that changes is over the last 18 months, and this is maybe overstating things, but over the last 18 months, we've discovered something fundamentally new, which is if you take enough data and you architect your model in the right way, that you can actually get an AI model to be equivalent to and better than people in terms of its ability to understand and generate language, and in terms of its ability to understand and generate images, as well as other media like audio. And so, the TLDR of it is it's really about generative AI and understanding, how far that's come in terms of the capability. Also, I think that there was partly over the last 18 months a change in the technology capabilities. But as with any technology innovation, it's partly a function of the technology and partly a function of user behavior and user understanding. And so that's another thing, is I think we hit a tipping point in terms of people's ability to understand, be excited about, and really leverage this technology. So those two things combined, I think, have changed. And so even though we went from kind of like a black and white shift on people talking about AI or not talking about AI to talking about AI and it being part of everything, I think underneath that are more gradual shifts in terms of the capabilities of the technology and the capabilities of people to understand that technology. So if you're a new PM coming into the space, I think it's important to understand generative AI, but even more importantly, I think it's just to understand AI in general. And oftentimes the right AI approach for your product won't be a generative AI approach, because generative AI kind of operates in a certain way, and sometimes the same things that drive generative AI can be componentized into pieces. You can pull apart those Lego blocks and use that to develop something new.
Absolutely. I think I just saw a question in the chat also that, where do you think we'll be a couple of years from now? So maybe we'll come to that bit. But maybe Adi, before I hand it back to you, another very important theme that I saw is careers, right? I think, Ravi, I think over the last couple of months, I'd say maybe 6 to 10 months, I think we've seen the market fundamentally shift as well, right? And where last year, I think there weren't as many product managers in the market, as many opportunities. I think this is flipped now. There have been a lot more PMs in the market, a lot more people trying to break into product, whereas the opportunities are slightly limited, right? So for those looking to transition, or for those who are already in roles, looking for new roles, if I know you mentor a lot of folks, and you've been sharing some of these insights with other folks. Do you have a playbook, or a certain set of checklists that they should, maybe just an approach as well for them to tackle looking at new roles in a market like this?
Definitely. I would say I would answer this in a couple of different ways. The first one being, like, I know the market is having its ups and downs. I think this is actually one of the toughest times in recent memories, because of some of the layoffs and just because of the economy and the interest rates and all of that. So it's made it a harder job market than it has been in a long time. And I think that's led some people to question, is product the right career for them? And I would say, I'm more excited about product as a career than ever. I think that, if you think about over the long scale, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years from now, our technology product is going to play a more important role in our lives. And are there going to need to be great product managers and product leaders that help build them? Absolutely, yes. So over the macro, I think it's a great career. I think it's a fantastic place to invest yourself, despite some of the micro challenges. In terms of those micro challenges, there's more people looking, there's fewer opportunities. And so it's more important than ever to kind of break through the noise. I was talking to someone recently, and the old way of kind of applying to a job and getting interviews is really broken. It's broken on the hiring side, and it's broken on the candidate side. Hiring managers are finding that they're not getting great candidates through applications, and candidates are finding that they often don't even hear back from companies. And so, that way of searching for a job is broken. I think it's more important than ever to treat your job search process not in sort of the traditional way, but in a new way, where you're networking with folks, you're building your personal brand, and you're doing everything possible to differentiate yourself from other folks. The one really tactical piece of advice I would give folks is do some writing. Show up online. You don't need to start a blog or a Substack. You don't need to do it all the time. But if you just have 3 or 5 pieces of your thinking about a particular area that are online, that are linked from your LinkedIn profile, that you share with folks, it helps people not look at you through the lens of a resume, but look at you through the lens of what your ideas are. And it gives you a reason to reach out to people. You might reach out to someone who's at a company that you're really interested in working with and say, hey, I just wrote this piece based on some of my experiences. And, I think it's relevant to some of the challenges that you have. I wanted to share it with you. And it's a great way to kick off a conversation. And so looking for those ways to really show off what you can do and represent yourself above and beyond your resume and your CV and your cover letter, I think are really important.
God, Ravi, thanks so much for sharing that. Ravi, if you could go back a couple of years, do you remember instances on what platform or what channel really worked for you when you were transitioning? I'm sure in your case, towards the later stages of your career, most of it would have been inbound. But maybe if you could go back 3-4 roles, did LinkedIn DMs help you at that time? Did going to online conferences, or emails, cold emails? It could be. Just wanted to hear your experience and what's worked for you personally.
Yeah, I think two things have worked really well. Is one, building relationships with people that are at the companies that you're really interested in, and then one thing that works really well, definitely here in the U.S. I'm not sure how well it'll work in India, but I found talking to VCs is really helpful, right? Even when you're relatively junior, there's a lot of junior VCs. There's associates and principals, and it turns out they're a hub of opportunity. They're seeing the founders. They're seeing opportunities in their portfolio. They're seeing opportunities beyond their portfolio. And so if you can build those relationships, that's a case where, one relationship with, a VC who feels really strongly about you as a candidate might be worth 100 relationships with other folks, just because they're seeing so much volume in terms of opportunities. So think about, within the people that within your community, who are the connectors, who are the hubs. That might be VCs, it might be recruiters, it might be really networked people, it might be people that run communities, people that run courses, and build relationships there, because that can often help you significantly expand your network with many fewer relationships than having to do the cold emailing.
Got it. No, that's a great tip. I think folks very, very under the radar. I don't see too many in India, at least, using that. So I think completely agree with you. I think their job day in day out is to chat with founder. So they definitely have alpha that you're missing out on, based on whichever stage, right? If you want to work with early stage startups, you want to work with late stage. Those are the kind of venture capital friends that you should be making. And yeah, I mean, they'll definitely know what's working in the market. So yeah, chat to them. I think thanks for that, Ravi. I think
sure.
that's not often shared. So a refreshing tip for folks to write down.
The other thing I found is, like, some people will ask, well, why does a VC want to talk to me? I'm not raising any money. And actually, they want to talk to you precisely because of that, because everyone who's coming to them is asking for money. If you're coming to them and saying, hey, I'm not asking for money, I just have these great skills and I would love to add value to your portfolio or to the people that that's a very different conversation than the typical conversation that they're having. And it's a way for them, it's valuable for them too, because if they can introduce you to a portfolio company and that company ends up hiring you, that's value that they provide to that company above and beyond the check. And VCs are constantly looking for ways to do that.
Absolutely. There, how can I be helpful quote becomes reality for them, right? Like by you just going to them, they can add value to their portfolio. So works both ways. Folks, I think fascinating tips there. Adi, do you want to go deeper into some of these, and then I'll pick some from the Q&A tab here.
Absolutely. I think even the previous advice, very tactical writing, that is something that we encourage within our cohort as well. Just take in your session learnings, put it out on LinkedIn, right? That's the best way to get started. It easily makes you stand out among hundreds of other candidates. So great advice there, Ravi. I personally wanted to know a bit more about domains within product management, right? That's one of the most supported questions as well. But you have worked across social, gaming, B2B, B2C, pretty much the entire spectrum there is within product management, right? When you change domains, how important is it to change your approach? How do you navigate all of this? Because when PMs start their careers, they think a lot about whether this is the right domain for me, whether if I switch from B2B to B2C, it might shake things up, right? So how do you think about this? What's an approach that has worked best for you?
In terms of how to get up to speed on a new domain really quickly?
Yep.
Yeah. I think the key thing I found is to talk to customers and start there. And so, if it's a B2B role, if you can access one or a couple of the customers and get an understanding of, the product that they're using and why they're using that, or competitors that they might look at. I've done that for my role. So for example, when I went and started at Tinder, I'd never used the product. I was never going to use the product. I was happily married at the time. And so I needed to be able to understand how to understand that customer and connect with that user base. Similarly, when I was at Facebook, I was on a team focused on Gen Z. I was never going to be young again. And so, I had to understand how to talk to customers. And You could talk to individual customers. You can also talk to people that might have a interesting perspective. So one of the things that I did before I started at Tinder was I talked to a friend of mine who is a relationship therapist. And it turns out that he sees a lot of people coming to him and being burned out on online dating. And so he sees the negative side of online dating. He also sees some of the positives. And he was able to very quickly give me kind of a lay of the land in terms of what works and doesn't work for people from an online dating perspective. So I would start there and say, definitely connect with customers, get that ground truth. I think it's also helpful to talk to experts. So again, this is an interesting way to connect with VCs or other experts in the industry. It turns out that most people are really helpful. And if you ask good and high quality questions and you're genuinely curious to learn, they'll be willing to answer an email or get on a quick call to help you get up to speed. And then the third thing I think, which, it sounds obvious, but doesn't always happen, and I don't always do it, is to use the products. Use the product that you're interested in or the new company that you've started at. Use the competitive products that can really help you get up to speed pretty quickly on the domain, just by thinking, deeply about the product. Like, why does the product navigate in this way? Why is this functionality important or not important? And so that way, by talking to customers, talking to experts, using the products, you can pretty quickly get up to speed on an entirely new domain.
Absolutely. And specifically double clicking on Tinder there, it's hailed as one of the best consumer apps out there. For the longest time, I think it still is, but it was the number one monetized app globally by far, right? So I'll combine a product differentiation question here, but what actually made you stand out? Because dating is a space which is heavily saturated with tons of different apps, right? But Tinder, time and again, has proved that it is the market leader by far, right? So what are things that you folks did differently at Tinder that probably others weren't able to do?
Yeah, I think it's a cascading set of things. So Tinder's really interesting because it's one of the few products that had instant product market fit. From the moment it came out, it started growing like wildfire. And there were a few things in those very early days that gave it product market fit. So it caught on during the early days of mobile. And it was one of the first, it was the first dating app that was really, truly mobile native. And so there were a few things that made it work really well with this new device. The first one was the friction to go from, I think I want to try this, to I'm actually in the app was much lower. At the time, if you wanted to set up a profile on Match.com or eHarmony, it might take you 15 or 20 minutes. You'd have to answer all of these questions. And that's something people don't think about. Like adding your photos at the time, you would have to you'd have to download your photos off the camera, upload them into your profile, fill out all this information, your income, your interests. It was a lot of work to get started. Instead, Tinder used Facebook Connect and then massively simplified the profile. So it's add 1 or 2 sentences to your profile, pick the photos off of Facebook that you want to use, and you could be in and starting to swipe in a minute or less. So that was one thing. The second thing was that on dating platforms at the time, people were just getting a lot of messages from folks. And so they were kind of getting inundated with messages from folks that they weren't interested in connecting with. And the second major innovation for Tinder was double opt-in, the idea that I swipe on you, you swipe on me. There's now mutual interest. And as a result, we're going to have a much better conversation. So that was a second thing that made it really, really effective in terms of the product. And then the third thing was it was just designed for mobile. Vertical. The swipe is a really nice tactile, mobile native user interaction. The fact that it was location based, you would see people that are near you, you wouldn't have to fill in all your details. That was all really helpful. So 3 things out of the gate that made Tinder have much better product market fit than anything before. And then after that, Tinder's really continued to innovate around those core principles, and it stayed true to those core principles. So one of the examples I like to use is people want to be able to filter based on height. And so they want to be able to come into the app and filter based on height or income or college education. And the Tinder founders and the product has continued to have this philosophy that Tinder's not a search engine for people. The way you get to know people is you talk to them. You don't search for them with filters that you might find on some Google or some B2B software. And so although Tinder could charge people to search based on height and probably make a lot of money on it, the company hasn't done that. And so it's remained true to those core principles that made it stand out. And as a result, it's the lightest way to meet people. It's easy to get into. It's easy to swipe. It's not prescriptive about what you should or shouldn't be looking for. As a result, it's attracted the biggest audience. And as a result, it's benefited from network effects so that, for the time you spend in Tinder, you'll probably get more matches there than in other apps. And so that's continued to help Tinder stay one of the most popular dating apps.
Absolutely fantastic insights there. I think many product case studies out there on Tinder, but these insights specifically were super helpful. Another interesting challenge, not just with Tinder, but with any consumer or B2B app where there are two different sides, right? Either two-sided marketplaces or a supply and a demand side, is that it generally tends to be skewed on one side, right? Like in this case, it would be skewed based on gender, right? There will be, especially in countries like India, where the gender ratio is heavily skewed on dating apps. How would you go about solving a challenge like that? Because it could prove to be a huge cold start problem for any PM, right?
Yeah, in the Tinder case in particular, or just in general?
I think maybe we can take Tinder as an example, because that'll help us learn principles that will apply to everything I'm assuming. So.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing for folks that are interested in this particular class of problems, Andrew Chen has a fantastic book called The Cold Start Problem. And he talks about that there's often the hard side of a marketplace, and it's really important to solve that side. I'll actually use a different example. I'll use Bumble as an example because I think they've done such just a great job here. So in the early days, the founder of Bumble was actually one of the founders of Tinder. The early Bumble app looked a lot like Tinder. So they're very similar apps that were developed around the same time. And yet Bumble has been able to succeed and build a really strong and healthy business. And the way that they did that was by recognizing this idea that, the hard side of the problem for dating apps is often creating a safe enough and high quality enough and effective enough experience for female users. And by establishing a brand that's really female forward, by having the product really reflect that brand, with the fact that women move first and that women are the ones that are driving the experience, they solved one of the most critical things that I think Tinder doesn't do as good a job of solving, is that for female users, the early experience can often be overwhelming. And because they've done a good job of solving for that side of the market, there's a lot of women that prefer to use Bumble. And as a result, there's a lot of men that prefer to use Bumble as well. And so they built a really strong business. There's other things about about Tinder that work really well and have continued to help it have the market share that it has. But I think that thinking about the market, where is the hard side of it and how do you solve for it is really important. And Bumble is just one of the best examples of looking at this industry and saying, there's a different way to go about this, and we're really going to solve for the hard side that nobody else is looking at.
Fantastic. I think, Ravi, you have an amazing blog on your website about why Quibi failed and why TikTok won, which talks a lot about consumer products. So folks, if you haven't checked it out, please do. It's super insightful, and I'm sure you'll have a lot to learn from there as well. Swaz, do you want to take the next one?
Yeah, since you mentioned Quibi, I think that was supposed to be like this poster startup, right? Industry stalwarts from both tech and basically the startup ecosystem and Hollywood coming together and creating in a space that is probably like a perfect baby for the two of them. But sometimes that tells you, and they had all the capital. I think they raised crazy money, right? So sometimes that just tells you that, maybe capital and seniority is not just something that works. There are lots more things to making a startup work, right?
Absolutely. And to their credit, I think they did a fantastic job about thinking about where Hollywood was going and made some really big and bold bets. And in that piece about why TikTok succeeded and why Quibi didn't, I highlight sort of an interesting way to look at the market that I think TikTok really got right and Quibi less so. And the thing that I think Quibi did was they said, okay, let's take the Hollywood experience and then let's shrink it down to a smaller screen and to more bite-sized content. And so they wanted to have the same sort of production value as Hollywood. But one of the things they missed is that on mobile devices are inherently social. And one of the reasons that TikTok works so well, that YouTube works so well, is not just because it's a smaller screen and smaller, more bite-sized content. It's because of the social layer. And so they said, they sort of shrunk down the production value of Hollywood content, but didn't make up for it in terms of the social value of how people engage with and talk about that content. At the time in the post, there wasn't even a way to share things. There definitely weren't ways to like things. There weren't ways to talk to other folks in the social product. And so as a result, they created something where the content wasn't as high production value as something like Netflix, and it wasn't as social as something like TikTok or YouTube or Snap. And so they were in this kind of awkward part of the market where TikTok was serving their users better, Netflix was serving their users better, and Quibi is sort of compromised in the middle and not serving either one of those use cases as well as they could.
Got it. No, thanks for sharing that, Ravi. Adi, I have a question. Ravi, from your time at Tinder, the right swipe or the left swipe feature that you mentioned, was that pioneered by Tinder or was this inspired by other apps? And the question that I'm getting to is for product managers, especially in consumer, and when you're trying to create a category, do you always have to do something, absurdly new? Or can you take inspiration, see what's working across? What's helped you in your 2 decades of product management?
Yeah, I think one of the things that's really helpful is to look outside your domain for how other people are solving this problem in a totally different domain. So I'll give 2 examples, one from Tinder, one from Tripadvisor. So Tinder, the swipe feature was legitimately new, but what drove it was one of the founders who was dating at the time thought about like, what is the dating experience like? And he said, but one of the things that I do is like, I'll go to a bar or a restaurant and just scan the room. And so as I like lock eyes with people, I know, is this someone I'd want to connect with, or is this someone that I don't want to connect with? And it's a really instantaneous thing. It's a very visceral thing. And that led the founding team to start to think about what is the mobile digital equivalent of scanning the room and very quickly deciding based on a set of people who you're interested in connecting with. The other important thing about locking eyes is, that person will look back at you and you'll get some signal about whether or not that person might be interested in having a conversation with you. And that's where the double opt-in came from. And so this really incredibly innovative and interesting user mechanic around swiping and matching came from observing the behavior in a different domain than online dating. It came from looking at real world dating. Another interesting example at Tripadvisor was we were trying to think about how do we improve the search experience on Tripadvisor? How do we make it easier for people to search? There's millions of different places on Tripadvisor. There's the hotels and the restaurants. And the way that Tripadvisor worked is actually the best way to search Tripadvisor was to go to Google and type in what you wanted, and Tripadvisor would probably come up. And so a lot of people were kind of using Tripadvisor intermediated through Google, and we wanted to make the on-site search experience better. And I was looking at like Booking and Expedia, and none of them had the same diversity of places as well as the same content to really help understand how do you improve search. And as I started to look at different app experiences, the ones that really stood out to me were two things. One was one of the best search and discovery experiences on the planet is Spotify. They do such a good job. They've got millions of different songs. You may know what song you want to listen to. You may not know what song you want to listen to, just like you might know what hotel you want to book. You might not know what hotel you want to book. In either case, Spotify does a really good job of connecting connecting you with the music that you either know you want to hear or something that you'll like. So beautiful example of how to deliver on search and discovery. Amazon and Etsy, to a similar extent, also do that. So I think it's really helpful for product managers to look outside their domain and maybe look outside technology altogether and ask the question of who's solving, not the problem that I'm solving, but who's solving a problem that has like a similar shape to the problem that I want to solve. And oftentimes that's something that can get a light bulb to go off.
Thanks so much for sharing. Ravi, one question. We've been going through the Q&A, so just picking up a couple of questions from here. I'm guessing this one is tied to your Tripadvisor experience. I haven't used the platform recently, but they're asking, what are your thoughts on going full stack when you start with one part of the problem statement? So I'm guessing in Tripadvisor, it was largely about reviews. Have they successfully been able to go full stack, like maybe what booking.com does? Like, have they been able to do that? If yes, is that the best route? If not, why not? I think that's a question. Let us know if you have, if the question's clear. If not, we'll ask for more details around that.
Yeah, that sounds good. Let me take a stab at it, and then happy to answer any follow-ups. So,
yeah, Ravi, just for context, from an Indian ecosystem, there was an app called Zomato, which largely did just reviews, and today it's one of the largest food delivery platforms as well. So, maybe that is a context that they're trying to bring in. Yeah, I just thought I'll add that in, so people listening in also can be relating to Tripadvisor.
Perfect. Yeah, so one of the ways to think about this, and this is like a very simple way so we can dig into more details, is there's really two steps in food delivery or travel booking or in most purchases. There's discovery and there's actually the transaction. And in travel, at the time, and still to a large extent today, you discover on Tripadvisor and then you book on booking.com. And so you discover on one platform, you transact on a different platform. And for, a variety of reasons, I haven't thought deeply about this, but like as different, market segments sort of evolve, you tend to have players that specialize in discovery and you tend to have players that specialize in transaction. And I think the Zomato case is a good one where, they started with discovery, but they didn't necessarily help with the food delivery, but you had startups like Swiggy really focused on the food delivery space. And ultimately you can get to a really strong strategic position if you can be full stack, if you can deliver both the discovery and the transaction experience on one platform. I think as a general rule, it's actually easier to go from discovery to transaction than it is to go from transaction to discovery. And so that can help to inform your strategy. If you look at booking.com today, they spend a lot of money on Google. They have been one of the largest purchasers of Google AdWords in the world. And that's because discovery is happening on Google, and then they need to pay Google for the traffic so that they can fulfill the transaction. They have such good unit economics on the transaction that they're able to do that. But even better is to be in the position that Zomato is, where you have the discovery and you have the transaction. That allows you to have a lot of traffic as well as convert that traffic and have a really good average revenue per user.
Thanks so much for those insights. Adi, do you want to come back for a couple of more? There are way too many questions, and I assure you we will not be able to take all of them. Ravi, just a quick time check. Is it okay if we go on for another 10 minutes, if that's okay?
Yeah, for sure. That sounds good.
Adi, then maybe we'll alternate. You go for one, then I'll come
Absolutely.
back.
Sounds good. So, Ravi, a topic that I personally wanted to know about was stakeholder management, right? Because this is a subject which is not explicitly taught often either in courses. You directly are thrown into the deep end of the water when you join in a job. And you have probably worked with some of the smartest founders out there, founders of Tinder, probably Tripadvisor and Facebook. What are some key learnings that people can take away from your journey when it comes to stakeholder management, since you have dealt with it at the highest level, and founders can be eccentric at times, so it might be a crazy job dealing with that. So
cool. So I think I would break that problem down into two separate problems. One is managing up, and then within managing up, there's a whole set of things around managing up to founders that I think are different. And the other is stakeholder inclusion, which is the idea of working across the organization to align everyone and get the support that you need. I actually have on my website, I call it the Product Competency Toolkit. It's the 12 competencies of product managers. Those are organized into 4 different areas. So product execution, customer insight, product strategy, and influencing people. And within influencing people, there's actually 3 competencies. One is team leadership, which is, working with your team to help them grow. And then the other 2 competencies are managing up and stakeholder inclusion. And so, both of these are incredibly important. I'll start and really deep topics. So I'll just kind of quickly start. So with stakeholder inclusion, there's kind of 2 things there. One is I've actually over time renamed it from stakeholder management to stakeholder inclusion, because the stakeholders that are really critical to helping you deliver on your product vision want to be included. They don't want to be managed. And that's a really important change in how you think about working with stakeholders. At the same time, stakeholder inclusion doesn't mean compromise. It's much better to make a high conviction and opinionated decision, and change that decision down the road than it is to make a compromise decision that everyone is happy with, but actually doesn't serve the customer. So one of the key things that I think is an important part of stakeholder inclusion and management is this idea of disagree and commit. And the idea there is that you want to cast as wide a net as possible when making decisions. Make sure everyone's perspective is understood and well informed. Then make a clear, high conviction decision, and make sure all the stakeholders understand what that decision is, and are aligned with carrying that decision forward, knowing that if they agreed with the decision, great. If they didn't agree with the decision, it's still up to them to really support it, make the decision as successful as possible. And if it turned out it wasn't the right decision, that you revisit and you remake it. So kind of 2 things. One, include stakeholders, but have a disagree and commit culture. That means that including stakeholders is a matter of sourcing the best ideas and making the highest conviction decision, not a matter of compromise. Because every compromise you make as a product team internally is a compromise you've made for the user. And so when you don't make decisions because you couldn't agree internally, your user ultimately has to make decisions for you, right? So a very tactical thing is, someone might say, well, we want this setting, right? We have this customer that wants this setting in the product. And you as the product manager know that only applies to 5% of customers, and that actually just adding that setting is going to complicate the product. But you say, we're going to put the setting in the product anyway. So you've now said, internally, we don't want to make the choice. We actually want our users to make the choice for us. And your user can't build the product for you. So that I think is kind of like key to stakeholder inclusion. Any follow-ups there, or anything else to kind of dig into there?
I think one major follow-up that I had in mind was around conflict resolution, because product management as space can be highly subjective, right? What might look good to me might not look good to others. How do you manage conflicts in that case?
I think the way to manage that is to be really clear about what the 2 different perspectives are, so that you understand what the conflict is. Because sometimes it can feel like there's a conflict, but it's actually, once you put it down on paper, it's not as big a gap as you might think. So be really clear about what the different perspectives are, what that would mean in terms of different decision that you would make, and then why each person feels like that is the right perspective. And the other thing that I think is important is to have a culture that embraces escalation. So, escalation sometimes is a dirty word, but actually it's a great way to make decisions at a company. And if you and your stakeholders can't get to a clear agreement, but you know what the decision is that you need to make, why each different stakeholder has that opinion, then you can escalate to the person that ultimately that decision comes up to, and have that person make the decision. Ultimately, you want to try to use that as little as often, or as less often as possible. But escalation can be a good way if there is at loggerheads. The other thing that I think is really helpful here is to say, let's make a decision that's high conviction, and we will revisit. And here's what we'll be looking for when we revisit. And so a lot of times when people entrench around decisions, it's not because they're being inflexible. It's because they think that there's no opportunity to make this decision again. But if you have a process that is thoughtful, data informed, willing to be flexible and change direction, then it's much easier for stakeholders to get aligned.
Perfect. Thanks for answering that. Yeah,
one just kind of idea that I
ahead.
found really valuable on this is like, what do you do if you feel like someone can't hear you? You talk louder, right? Because you want to be heard.
Yeah.
And this happens with stakeholders, right? So stakeholders who don't feel like they've been heard talk louder and louder and louder and get more and more entrenched. And then all of a sudden, it's not really clear what they need versus what they don't need. And I remember this very, very clearly. I was talking to someone on a marketing team who felt like the product team wasn't working well with them. And, he was saying, we really, really need this. And I was like, why do you need this? This doesn't seem that important. And I'm like, is this really the most important thing? And he said, well, no, it's not the most important thing, but I just want to get the product team to do something for marketing. And so like, that's not a position that you want to be in. You want to be in a position where everyone is sort of, advocating for things transparently, and where people feel like they're being heard.
Got it. Ravi, you mentioned stakeholder alignment and stakeholder management a little bit. One of the questions I saw in chat, this is from Krish. He asks, what is the best way? I think this is more for mid-stage PMs. One is, what is the best way to communicate upwards? Are there any processes that have helped you? And second is recognition. PM, like I think a product role is often a thankless role. So maybe when you're managing a set of product managers, what is the best way? Any tips or processes that have worked with you both while managing up and managing down?
Yeah. So in terms of managing up, such a big topic. So I think there's a couple of things. So your ability to manage up is really a function of two things. It's one, a function of how much confidence management has in you. And it's also a function of how aligned you are with their existing perspective. And so if you're advocating to do something that management already believes in, they don't need to be confident in you. But if on the other hand, you're advocating for something that is, not on management's radar or something that's different than the direction that they want to go in, then they have to be really confident in you because they are placing a bet on your perspective being more accurate than their perspective. And so when people are managing up, I think it's helpful to kind of map that out. Like, where are you in terms of alignment? Where are you in terms of confidence? And there's a green zone where those things are, you're high on both. But there's also a red zone where you could be low on one or the other. And so it's important to kind of know where you stand when you're going into these conversations. One way to think about it is like there's a ladder of how aligned you are with executives. One where you're fully aligned, one where the executive is giving you support. They may not see eye to eye, but they want to support you. One where you're getting their permission. They're saying, hey, I don't see this, but you've got permission to go ahead. And then one where you're actually completely out of alignment. And so knowing like how far out on a limb you are with executives is really important as well. That can help you figure out how to engage. And so once you've gotten a barometer of, where you are in terms of how the executive is looking at you, in terms of their confidence in you and how aligned you are, that can help you figure out the right communication strategy. I think with communicating with executives, it's important to communicate frequently, communicate clearly, and really, really importantly, something that I've learned over time is the style of communication when you're just starting out is different than the style of communication when you're dealing with people that are more senior. When you're a associate PM reporting into a senior PM, people who are successful usually communicate very comprehensively. They say, here's all the tickets that I'm working on. Here's everything that's happening. Here's all the metrics. And the person that they're providing that information to has all of the context. And they see that you're being really comprehensive. And so they believe that, things are going well. But when you're communicating with executives, they just don't have the same level of depth in your domain, and they don't have the same level of attention to absorb all of that data. And so the signal that they look for is not are you communicating comprehensively? They look for, are you communicating with high conviction? And that's an important thing to change as you deal with more and more senior executives in the organization, because they have so little time to spend with each person that they're debugging based on, does this person seem like they know what's happening and that they believe in what they're doing, or does it seem like they're getting kind of overwhelmed by the details? So there's an important kind of shift in communication style. There's other things as well, like know how leaders in your community, in your organization, like to communicate. Do they prefer slides? Do they prefer written word? Do they prefer meetings? Do they like to start with the conclusion? Do they like to end with the conclusion? Those are all things that can really, really help. So big topic. There's a lot to cover on it.
Yeah, maybe we should organize a follow-up session with you just on this one topic, right? I think there's so much to uncover, both upwards and downwards. But Ravi, as we come to the end of this, I think the chat section definitely has tons of great feedback for you. The questions are aplenty. I agree, folks. We've tried our best to get a bunch of them together and try asking Ravi questions that cover most of them, or at least we tried to cover as many as we could. But we will try definitely reaching out to Ravi again, and maybe just organize a informal 1 hour chat sometime that his calendar allows. But with that, I think folks do keep dropping your feedback on the chat section. I think Ravi will be able to go through that now that he has a little bit of time. But Ravi, thank you so much for joining us. I think this was and like absolutely incredible. I think the perfect start for our kickoff. We will definitely hang out with them a little longer. We have a small office hours post this, so for folks who hang around. But yeah, you can see the chat section. I think tons of great feedback for you. So thanks so much for joining us.
Amazing. Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to kick off with everyone. Have a fantastic rest of the conference. And thank you so much. And connect with me on LinkedIn. I'm pretty accessible. Feel free to reach out to me. And I would be very excited to do another session. So happy to do that. Good luck to everyone.
Awesome. We got that by Ravi. Before we let you go, maybe we usually have this tradition where we do a thumbs up and we take a photo together. Some of them do share some of their notes online. So we did ask them to tag you as well. But this makes for a great cover picture. So yeah, if you could just pose with us for a second or two, it gives them a chance to take a screenshot. So yeah.
Cool. That sounds good.
Awesome. That's the reaction that we wanted to see. But thank you so much for joining us, Ravi. We have a couple of other slides to go through with the rest of the batch, but we will definitely catch up with you. And folks, if you did enjoy Ravi's session, please, like he mentioned, he's pretty active and accessible on LinkedIn. So we will share his link there, and everyone will be sharing their notes. So definitely tag him. I'm sure he'd love to see some of the interesting ones, and we will go back to him and ask him some of the ones that he really liked. Right. So take your time, put in your effort while curating some of these notes. But with that, Ravi, thank you so much for joining in today. This was absolutely
Thank you so much for having me. It was an honor to be here.
Sure.
Thank you.
Awesome. Folks, how did you like this session? Yeah, put it down in the chat.
That has been crazy all throughout. Thanks so much for showing so much love throughout the session. Amazing questions.
Yeah, actually, one thing that I really liked compared to the previous batches, I think I don't know whether it is because of TPF or because of the ecosystem in general. I feel this time like product sense is a notch higher, and I don't say this like I said it. I'm not saying it just because Ravi said it's like off stage. It is pretty awesome to see at least everyone taking a step further. In just terms of how you all are thinking, so that is pretty awesome. But before we let you go, I think we have a lot of interesting stuff to and think of this. So usually I think what we've tried to do, compared to last time, we used to do these sessions and then break, and we used to do office hours on a later date. But now what we've decided, even though it's a little late, Adi and me will stick around for the next half an hour. Some of you all had questions around product management, around careers in general. So we'd love to help on that front. One. Second, since this is the kickoff session, we'd love to take some time out for everyone to understand what Insurjo has in store for them and how it will help them, right? So I think, folks, thanks so much for the feedback. I think this is absolutely amazing, and we're really happy that y'all were able to observe from the session. And there were a couple of common questions that Adi, you and me can go through on terms of,
Absolutely.
where can, if someone's really early, where do they start from? For someone who's looking to transition in the next couple of months, where do they start? How do they make the best use of Insurjo? So we'll cover all of that. If you'll have more questions post that, you can use this as an opportunity. We are here to clear all your doubts. Sometimes becomes really hard to do it on chat, so stick around. This is one. But before we go there, I think, Adi, we have a couple of slides which will clear a lot of these questions, right? So if you can go through that.
Absolutely.
And yes, folks.
By the way,
Number one.
before we kick off the slides, folks, stick around for just a bit. We have something special for you. So I know it might be getting late for some of you who are joining from the APAC region, but please stick around. We have something exciting for you. And since this is a kickoff, like Swaz shared, we'll clear a lot of your common queries, right? So maybe just 15-20 minutes more, and
Yeah.
we'll
What
get ready.
Adi is referring to will not be shared on email or on WhatsApp. It will be only for those who stick around till the end, right? Yeah. So to kick things right off, Adi, pillars of Insurjo 24. Folks, these are the four main things that you will take away. We have a bunch of sessions lined up. We have the hackathon lined up for you. Many of y'all did ask on the chat section, hey, is this being recorded? No, this is a completely live learning cohort. Although I know this session can go in slightly late in IST time zone. So we will keep it live. Yeah, I think Vedant says that, hey, it's a Saturday, so it's not late at all. But Vedant, some of these sessions are on weekdays as well, so it can get a little late. So what we suggest is we will, I mean, some feedback that we've taken is we will keep it live on YouTube for another 24 hours. Let us know if that is okay. Give us a thumbs up on the reaction if that works for everyone. That will allow you to go back, rewatch it, and take down your notes. If you'll have any other questions around that. Okay, perfect. Dinner time. You can grab dinner and bring it. We're around for even we are super hungry, but yeah, we'll stick around for a little longer. Just curious, what does the word Insurjo mean? Yes, we will take this. I think this is a favorite every single time that comes through. But let me share what else is there in our Insurjo 24, and then I'll come to it. Um, the live sessions are on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays, unless a speaker needs to, move it by a day or two. But that'll be just plus or minus one day. Please finish all the weekly assignments and the notes that you need to post every week. Please don't leave it to the end. And this is a mandatory requirement for you to complete the course and get a certification, right? And we will release one every Monday. So that is post the next live session. You should have your first assignment. This is only the kickoff. So take a good night's rest tonight and tomorrow. The next week's going to be intense. Post which, I think maybe the next bit. Yes, post which every Sunday we'll have a relaxing networking and engagement session. So this is more of the fun stuff. We'll keep you posted if you do it tomorrow or the next Sunday, but every Sunday we have that plan. And week 4, this is the most important. Some of y'all might have already participated in last year's Insurjo, or our teardowns that happen monthly, right? Some of y'all might have already participated. Think of this as teardown 10x, right? So this is absolutely important. On the chat section, Abhay has also shared all the links that are important. So please bookmark these links. And where you need to post is at the bottom of your screen. So if you can see the screen, you share your learnings on either social platform that you're active, and tag the speaker of the session, so we go back to them and ask them which is their favorite ones that come out, and we will declare the winners from there, right? Some of y'all asked us for the schedule. The schedule is also attached on the Notion link that has been shared on the chat just now. It has also been shared with you on email. It has been shared on the community groups that you're part of, and it is here. So you can take a screenshot in case you haven't received it any other way. If y'all have any questions around this, y'all can ask now. We're happy to take it up. If not,
So
yes,
you'll
Adi.
see here that Yeah, in every week we are trying to cover different aspects of product management. So in week one, we're talking about building products people love, roadmaps. Next week is growth, positioning, messaging, packaging. Week three is data-driven growth, soft skills. All of these are super important toolkits, or I would say skill set to have in your toolkit as a product manager. So make sure that you stick around for the entire duration of the course. That's how you get to learn all of this, and you'll be we have been doing this for over 4 years now. The best folks are the ones that diligently show up in every session, complete all the assignments, submit everything, and this literally takes your time and effort. This is completely free to access, but all you need to do is put in that time, put in that effort, and complete this course, right? So that's all that we ask from you. But yeah, any questions? We'd love to
I think
share. But
you made the most important point. I think as a team, product folks is probably bringing you the best of mentors that aren't otherwise accessible. Right? We've tried this time to get global mentors, the best of best from the Silicon Valley for y'all. So we are doing our best. It is now in your hands. The like Adi said, I think effort. I mean, we are trying our best, but doing or putting in the effort post this live session is going to boil down to the effort that you put. And yes, the ones that really made the transitions last year or were able to upskill and apply it to their current roles were the ones that really post the live sessions went and put in the hard work, right? So that is an absolutely important point. um, Shashank asks a very important question. Where do we find the recordings? I think Shashank, personally, on today's chat, I have shared this at least 5 times. This is a live learning cohort. There will be no recordings. You can access the live session on YouTube for 24 hours. So if you've missed something, you want to go make notes, please go check it out. Subscribe to YouTube so you don't miss some of them. Yes, if you have any other questions, do let us know. Abhay is the guy you need to reach out to if you need a discount on Academy, right? So DM him. But yes, I think we can probably go through the slides and then take up some of these questions.
absolutely, I think the next bit is something that we had promised early on in the session, that if you would stay back till the end, we have something special for you. So here we go. So this is something that we have exclusively partnered with. Abhay or Tanmay from our team will put it in the chat. But along with Insurjo, if you want a B School certification, if you want to learn from the faculty of ISB, along with a bunch of industry mentors, this is the way to go. And we have a special 5% off for specifically for TPF members. This is something that they don't do generally, but since this is a cohort of students who are super eager to learn and are super interested in product management, we have partnered with them to bring this to you. So you can check it out in the link, use the access code, and please don't share this outside of the cohort, because this is exclusively meant for Insurjo members.
Folks, it took
Hope
us
you
it,
have some
it
value.
took us forever to get this done. I think this was one of the most requested things last year. So we've been able to arrange. And like Adi said, please don't share this outside, or else they'll cancel it for us as well. So yeah, it is something that we will not be able to share even on email, etc. Right. So this will not go out to anyone outside this cohort, not even to the broader TPF ecosystem. Um, so yeah, this is one that we wanted to share with y'all. Some of the questions that I'm seeing in the chat section, folks. Adi, is there anything else that you want to cover? I know there is one shout out
Yeah,
slide that I want to give, but is there any?
absolutely. I think apart from that, we have some housekeeping rules, but we'll reserve that for later. Since everyone has access to Notion, the knowledge base, everything, we'll cover that later. But maybe we can take in a few questions, and then obviously we have a shout out to do since this is a kickoff session. But yeah,
Perfect. Any questions? Questions. What is the meaning of Insurjo? Okay, this is a very interesting one. Um, yeah, if anyone guesses what Insurjo means, I think one extra Swiggy discount coupon from my side, or your dinner's on us. But anyone wants to take a rough guess, what does Insurjo mean?
I think if someone would have attended Insurjo 22, maybe they know the answer to this.
Anyone, anyone, anyone?
Group of
Increased
insurgent
surge of
people.
custom.
Very creative answers, but surge of new energy.
Yeah. Adi, do you want to go for it or do you want me to share this?
Share the story behind it. So,
Oh, I think someone just got this. Yes, I think someone did get this. But I think the chat is going so fast that I don't know where I saw that. But yes, someone in the
yeah,
chat section has got it. I think okay, now a couple of them are saying it. But yeah, you're right. I think whoever was the first one to get this, please DM us. But Insurjo was born out of so the first batch of Insurjo was very tiny, right? Our beta cohort was very tiny. And it was for early stage folks looking to transition into product management. So Insurjo, in short, is in search of a job, and it doesn't it also it's a Latin word which has another meaning. I think some of y'all have got the translation from Google, so y'all are right as well. But the actual short form was in search of a job, right? So yeah, whoever did get that first, please do DM us. But yes, this is the slide that the some of y'all might think, okay, hey, you know, what really goes behind the scenes in actually putting this together. Trust me on this. Adi and me are just probably spending 2 hours with you here, but there are over 20 folks, even here on the chat section, on Slack, on email, on WhatsApp, putting the curriculum together, coordinating with speakers, getting the right messages to you, helping you out with your accesses. There is just so many small things to do. So it's a group of 20 volunteers coming together and putting this, not just Adi and me. So huge, huge shout out to each one of them. If you see them on Slack, on WhatsApp, please do thank them. It is a thankless job, to be honest with you. I think there are tons of y'all are looking to transition. So yes, the end outcome is what you see in this 2 hour session today, but lots of effort behind the scenes. So huge, huge shout out to each one of them on the screen. Only request from us is that if you come across them on LinkedIn, Twitter, um, WhatsApp, or Slack, just drop them a small thank you. I'm telling you that will make the day for them. Right? Where's
absolutely.
Tanmay is the right question. I think Tanmay is on the chat section. Y'all can hit Tanmay OP in the chat, and he should be able to respond to you.
He's the one who's the brains behind most of the cohorts that we do. So pleased to thank him as well, along with many others. I know that it might look from the outside that the effort might be minimal, or this is just about hosting a 2 hour session. But trust me, the preparation for Insurjo probably began 2 months from now, right? It was an insane journey every year. Insurjo continues to be our flagship event, and it's all because of the love that you keep showing us that we keep on going in this journey. But before we, I think this will answer a few of your queries, but some housekeeping rules here. Please do join our Slack, join our WhatsApp. You will have links for all of this either in the chat or in your email. Make sure that you join these communication channels, because this is where pretty much everything about the cohort will be communicated, right, along with your emails. But these are two-way conversational channels, so you'll be able to ask your questions. On Slack, you'll be able to be among your peers and learn together, right? And you're already here on YouTube. Sorry, on Airmeet and YouTube. If you're watching this on YouTube, please hit that like button. But you know the drill by now. And tracking graduation milestones. Before we kicked off Ravi's session, we spoke about a few milestones that you need to complete. I'll quickly recap that. From every session, you need to take your learnings notes, share that on social, use the hashtag Insurjo with TPF, and tag at the product folks, right? This is how we know that you have completed your assignment. This is also a great way to implement what Ravi shared, right? He shared that right online, share it with people. That's how you stand out among peers. So it's a great way to also complete your cohort, but create a personal branding for yourself on LinkedIn, right? And a lot of people benefit from updating their LinkedIn bio to cohort member for TPF Insurjo 24. This is how you recognize other members who have joined this cohort, and this is how you get to know your peers a little better, right? The Notion link, by now you would have access to the Notion link. If not, check out the chat. Maybe we'll pin that again. But yeah, Notion is where our entire knowledge base is. Pretty much 90% of your queries will be resolved if you go through the Notion ones. So make sure that you have access to that. And lastly,
Yeah, I think a couple of
go through the
questions.
weekly agenda.
Once,
Yeah,
yeah. Once you're done, I think I'll take those up.
I think we are done here, but make sure that you do all of these six things. If you have been attending courses by TPF by now, this would be like a ritual. But if not, make sure that you check mark all of these boxes so as to have a great learning experience.
Awesome. I'll take up some of the questions from the chat section. Adi, if you see something, please feel free to pick it up. We'll try covering this in the next 10 minutes. So, folks, if there is something that we missed out, please feel free to add it to the chat section again. Pranav asked, what time are the live sessions? Pranav, everything will be updated on the Notion, so please do check. The hashtag is on the screen, so you can use this while sharing. Arvind, no LinkedIn links, please. I think we've said this multiple times. I think from the next one, we will be forced to remove people from the air meet in case you are sharing your LinkedIn links. Access to Insurjo 2022. We can enable a discount coupon. Do chat with Abhay. I think you can DM him on Slack. His full name is Abhay Jani. So yeah, just search for him on Slack and DM him. What is the format of assignments? You'll get to know on Monday. I can see a calendar, but no timing for tomorrow. Tomorrow is the networking session. So like I mentioned earlier, we will confirm on the groups if it's happening and what time it's happening tomorrow. But it will ideally start next Sunday because today was just a kickoff. Yes, I think we've covered most of the question. We are updating a new WhatsApp group, so please try the same link in 15 minutes. That should work for you. Will this help in getting your first job? Yes, I think the process is in place to help you there. But for folks really early in your journey, I'd suggest please go through the Insurjo fundamentals, which was essentially the product management fundamentals we did last year. Like shared on today's session, I think this one is going to be slightly more advanced. So you can go through that. In fact, that has an entire playbook for you to land your first role. Sargam, again, for you to access Insurjo 22, message Abhay on Slack. He can give you a discount coupon. Link to Insurjo fundamentals is on our academy. So you can go to theproductfolks.com, search for academy, and you should be able to find it. What time will all the sessions be held? It will be on your Notion. Please open the knowledge base and check the schedule there. Deadline to post the learnings on social is 48 hours after every session. Nishkant asked, hey, could you please elaborate on the notes that are to be prepared? I think search for the same hashtag. You can see some of the notes from last year. That could give you a good idea. Thanks, Suhas and Adi. Well managed. Thanks, Adarsh. Appreciate it. Folks, are there any other questions you'll want us to take?
I think for the notes, Swaz just wanted to point that out. Last year, a lot of folks, especially the winners, they had put out amazing sketch notes.
Sketch notes,
So
yeah,
we'll
those are the
probably share a few examples on Slack for you to go through that. But if you can do a sketch note, that'll be amazing. That automatically combines your entire session's learning into a one beautiful sketch note. So make sure you check that out. But if not, at least put out your learnings in maybe a couple of bullet points, share your key insights. They'll help you revise the session well and also share it with your friends, right? So a great way to stay on course. So yep, any
awesome. Yeah, I
how
was
do
just
we
replying to a couple on chat while you're taking that. I think this is,
validity
yeah.
of ISB code. Folks, this is valid just during Insurjo, so probably about 2 weeks more. If you're interested, do sign up on the link and use the code. You'll be able to get 5% off. What tools to use for Sketchnote? There are probably tons of them online. You can use a tool as simple as Canva, or if you are using iPad, there are tons of sketchnote apps. Note submission, post learnings. Yes, absolutely, Arush. You need to post your learnings and use the right hashtag and handle that you see on screen right now. And by the way, this is a great way to recap your graduation milestones. Make sure that you complete all four of the line items that you see here, right? Yes, product
I think maybe you want,
fundamentals. Yeah, that's right. Hmm. Yeah,
yeah,
sorry.
product fundamentals is inserted 20.
In Surgeon 22. That's right.
But yeah, very quickly, maybe I want to recap this slide again. Uh, for folks, live sessions, notes, post with the hashtag, tag TPF, tag the live mentor if there is one in that session. Weekly assignments is mandatory, and hackathon submission. I think this is fairly clear, right? Is there any doubts on this? For Insurjo 2020, okay, folks, like I think everyone's asking this one question. Product fundamentals, the product management fundamentals is the same as the previous Insurjo. Go to Slack, DM Abhay, he'll share a coupon code or a discount coupon in case you're looking for one. Else, you can go directly to the academy and to search the academy, just search the product folks academy. It should be the first link that comes up on Google, right? Any other question? LinkedIn at TPF is not coming up. You'll have to type up the whole thing. It's the product folks, right?
And use
Um,
spaces in between, like the space products, space folks. You will have the handle. How long do we get to work on our assignments? 48 hours.
48
So
hours.
make
Yeah.
sure that after every session, but even if you miss the 48-hour mark, it'll be a great idea to just post it. And since there'll be multiple sessions every week, make sure that you at least post the week's learnings within the same week, right? So
Awesome.
do we
Adi, I
have to
think with
post on both social,
anyone.
put it on either LinkedIn or Twitter if you want to do both. Always a great idea. So
Awesome, folks. With that, I think lots of questions are getting repeated. I think we've covered most of them. If there is anything new, happy to take it up. People are asking if there are any city-based meetups. Yes, there is one in Gurgaon. We have city meetups across 20 cities every month. So check out Grab Chai. Again, you can search for the product folks Grab Chai on Google, and you should be able to join um, in your city, right?
I've just put
And
out a link in the chat. You can find your nearest city there. We are live in more than 20 cities, not just in India, but globally. So check it out and you'll be able to find it.
thanks for that. Also, folks in the chat, please help us answer each other's question because many of these have been covered and it becomes slightly difficult for just the two of us to take up. Um, so, if you see any question that you know an answer to, please help us out. Yeah. Awesome. I think with that, we come to the end of today's session. It's just the starting. We have lots in store for y'all. If y'all do have more questions, maybe the time is now to ask for this. If not, yes, we will open up the WhatsApp groups once in a while so you can add your questions there. Try not to DM any folks personally. It becomes slightly hard to take up tons of your questions. And also, when you put it on the group, I think becomes easier for others to pick it up as well. Right. Um, Ankita asked, "Hey, what do we post today? Does anyone want to help her out? Because I think we've shared this, and it's fairly clear on today's. Um, yeah, it's on the screen. But does anyone want to help Ankita out and respond to her question on the chat? That'll be awesome. Someone asked, "How big is the hackathon group?" I think Abhay has answered that. It's a group of two. Um,
Posting learnings and assignments, yeah, those are two different things. You need to post your learnings on social, but there will be weekly assignments as well. So keep an eye out for those. We'll be sharing more about them in the coming week. So make sure you are on our Slack and WhatsApp.
yeah. Awesome. I think we can wrap unless there are new questions. Um, Someone asked us, okay, hey, what is okay? This is a good question. I think I saw something similar earlier also. What is your motivation for volunteering for the product folks? Folks, we've been around for, we've been doing this for almost 5 years now. So maybe we'll cover that to the end. We should actually cover that. Maybe we'll get some more volunteers who have been involved. You saw a ton of them on the screen. I think we'll bring them to answer your question. I think that will help you all a lot more. We've been at this forever now, and we met some incredible folks, right? So I think that just, and um, you know, getting messages from folks who transition, or even the small messages that you put, that these sessions are helpful to you. I think that we feed off that energy, right? Honestly, I think that is the biggest win for us. But yeah, we will get some more volunteers um, to answer that question for you.
Someone has asked who has designed this presentation. It's beautiful. So, Ashwin is the
That will
guy
be in the
who
chat.
is our designer. You would have seen his picture on our team slide, but he's the one responsible behind all our design. So,
Guys,
here's
Ashwin
to
OP on the chat.
Ashwin.
You would have seen the entire thing single-handedly. He's taking care right now. What's the answer, please? Awesome. Thank you so much, folks. Are there any other questions that haven't been answered? Please do let us know. If not, we will be opening this up to. We have a small online networking thing posted, so we call it the Product Folks Insurjo Lounge. That will be live. Only a couple of tables, but if not, I know it's pretty late, so grab a good night's sleep if you are in Asia. If you're across the world, on the other side of the world, have an amazing weekend ahead. It's just a start. Again, like I shared with you, I think please bookmark the links that Abhay has shared. It is pinned here as well, so you can bookmark these. The current WhatsApp group is full. Yes, you're right. We will be making that. Live. And Aditi asked what happens to the Swiggy coupons. I think the winners have already received their Swiggy coupons. So that was for the leaderboard, right? So Swiggy coupons are for the Airmeet leaderboard. Hackathon, we will be sharing more details on Monday. Y'all can form your own groups. Um, awesome. Soumya, thank you so much for the feedback. So, folks, if y'all have more feedback, do let us know. I think you can reach out to Adi or me on DMs. But with that, we are logging off for tonight, and we will see you all soon again. And WhatsApp is working now, by the way. So Vikram just share that so you all can join in if you aren't already. If you're already part of a group, try not to join. You're going to get the same messages across all. Satvik, I completely agree with you. Airmeet should have a text to or a speech to text LLM, and if there are similar questions, auto answer that. I think that's a great. If someone can build that out, that's an amazing one. But yes, with that, we will be logging off. Thank you so much for the feedback, and I'm really happy that you all enjoyed this. We will be sharing a small feedback form post this. So if y'all can just add in what you liked about it, if there are room for, and there's always room for improvement. So anything that you'd like to see, please do share it there. We'll catch you soon.
See you. Thanks so much for joining.